So how did Italy's banks end up in trouble again? Economist Andrea Montanino from the Atlantic Council joins us for more. Welcome.
Good evening.
So people are asking, how did we get here? We saw that Italy's banks were in deep trouble during the Eurozone crisis 5 years ago. So what's different about this one?
Well, I'd say at that time, Italian banks were not in a bad shape. Actually, no Italian banks was bailed out. Just to give you some numbers, some figures, German banks got 250 billion euros of state aid from the government. Italian banks got 4 billion at that time. So it was not a big issue. Now it's a relevant issue because the size of the non-performing loans is very high, is huge, and this is due mainly because of the economic crisis. So small and medium enterprises, small businesses are suffering, and therefore banks are suffering with them.
So you have businesses, you have investors, foreign banks. Who has the most to lose in this banking crisis?
For sure, small businesses and companies in general, because they rely on the banking sector for their lending. 80% of finance to the corporate sectors comes from the banking, the traditional commercial banks. So if the banking sector is not strong sufficiently, the economy will suffer.
So if you're one of these small businesses and you're looking at this political and financial picture, what sort of protection could they be looking at to try and limit their exposure, if any?
It's difficult to say. I mean, what a small business needs to do is probably to raise more capital, to look at private equity, so something different from the banking sector. We really need in Italy a transformation, which is a cultural transformation. It's not just a matter of the current crisis. I think is a break change now.
And you mentioned private equity, and according to the Wall Street Journal, JP Chase is one of these lenders that wants to step in to help UniCredit with its non-performing loans. So is turning to private banks and venture capitalists, is that a better strategy than perhaps trying to go and try and circumvent or at least try and navigate some of the rules set by the EU? Absolutely.
I'm pretty convinced that it's important to open up the market for non-performing loans in Italy. It's still a very small market. There are issues and problems, but it's developing. So there are a lot of opportunities right now because the size is big, and the quality of these loans is not so bad. I mean, you need a due diligence, but I think that there can be a good opportunity for many investors.
Now, some people are concerned about the timing. You have this banking crisis coming as Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has said he'll resign if this key constitutional referendum in December to reduce the Senate's power is defeated. What could the economic potential fallout be?
Well, first of all, I don't know, and I'm not sure Prime Minister Renzi will resign. I hope, to be honest, that he will win the referendum because it will be extremely important to speed up legislative process in Italy and to make things easier. So he needs to convince people about that. Clearly, if he defeats, the government will have a lot of trouble. He might resign sooner or later, but I would not say that there will be an economic crisis because a new government will take care. We need at least in Italy to change the electoral law before going to new elections. So it will take a while.
Now, some analysts are calling Italy's banking crisis a ticking time bomb for the region. What do you think of that assessment?
Well, in a way, I think it's true. I mean, Italy is a big country in the area, and the banking sector is suffering. As said, the size of non-performing loans is very high. So if a new economic crisis starts in Italy, will be a huge problem for the whole Europe, which is not in a good shape now, especially for political reasons.
So as this comes on the back of Brexit and sluggish economic growth in the Eurozone, do you think Italy may be the tipping point if it cannot resolve this banking crisis?
I think they can resolve. I think the way to resolve it is to give Italy time, to allow Italy to use European rules in a pragmatic way, if necessary. I'm talking about the bail-in rules, and to open up the market to the private sector in order to clean up the balance sheets of the bank. So it can be solved with some time.
I'm sure people will be watching closely on December 4th. Thank you so much for joining us, economist Andrea Montanino from the Atlantic Council.
Thank you.